My grandfather always said, "A woman is only as strong as the truth she stands on." He spent 80 years building a shipping empire that spanned 5 continents, only for his own children to turn his name into a lie before his body was even cold. I'm Maya Sterling. 2 weeks ago, I was the heir to a $4 billion legacy. Today, I'm the woman who had to send my own father and uncle to prison to get it back. You see, my family didn't just mourn my grandfather, they practiced his handwriting. They sat in his study, surrounded by his ghosts, and forged a new will that erased his final wish and handed them the keys to a kingdom they were destined to destroy. They thought they were clever. They thought I was just a distraught girl with a parting gift compass. They were wrong. This is the story of how I used a 1940s nautical relic and a digital paper trail to catch my family in the biggest inheritance heist in history. Arthur Sterling was a titan. He started with a single tugboat in a rusted harbor and ended with a skyscraper in Manhattan. He was my mentor, the man who taught me that wealth isn't a prize, it's a responsibility. But to my uncle Marcus and my father Silas, he was just a dying ATM. The day of the funeral was gray and suffocating. As we stood by the grave, I caught Marcus whispering to the family lawyer, a man named Henderson who had looked after our estate for decades. They weren't grieving, they were nodding. 2 days later, we gathered in the mahogany study for the reading of the will. I knew what to expect. Months earlier, Grandpa had shown me the draft. 60% of the assets were going to the Sterling Foundation for global literacy, and I was to be the sole trustee. The rest was split into modest, controlled stipends for the family to ensure they never went hungry. Henderson opened the folder. His hands were shaking, but his voice was cold. The Final Testament of Arthur Sterling, dated January 14th. My blood ran cold. January 14th? Grandpa was in a morphine-induced haze by then. Henderson read the words that shattered my world. The foundation? Gone. The stipends? Replaced by a family management trust, controlled entirely by Marcus and Silas. My name was mentioned once. I was given $50,000 for educational expenses and a vintage brass compass from Grandpa's first boat. "That's it?" I asked, the silence in the room ringing in my ears. "That's his final wish, Maya," Marcus said, leaning back in Grandpa's leather chair like he already owned the soul of the room. He realized at the end that the business should stay with the grown-ups. I left the estate that night with nothing but a backpack and that heavy brass compass. I checked into a cheap motel, the weight of the betrayal sitting on my chest like lead. But Marcus underestimated one thing. Grandpa didn't just teach me how to trade stocks, he taught me how to spot a leak in a hull. I called an old friend Sarah, who specialized in forensic document analysis. I had managed to snap a high-res photo of the signature page before Henderson tucked it away. "Look at this, Maya," Sarah said, pulling the image up on a monitor. She zoomed in on the S in Sterling. When a person signs their name, it's a reflex. Even a dying man has a certain rhythm. But look here, see these microscopic, jagged edges? That's called line quality. It happens when someone is tracing. This signature wasn't written, it was drawn. Next, I looked at the date, January 14th. I checked the hospital logs. Grandpa had been under heavy sedation that entire day. He couldn't have signed a birthday card, let alone a complex legal document. But I needed the smoking gun. I picked up the vintage compass. It was a beautiful piece of 1940s engineering, but as I turned it in my hands, I noticed something off. The needle was locked, not just stuck, internally blocked. I remembered Grandpa's favorite saying, "If the map is wrong, check the instrument." I unscrewed the base plate. Tucked inside the hollow housing was a high-density micro SD card, wrapped in a note that read, "For the one who actually looks." I plugged the card into my laptop. My heart was hammering against my ribs. The card contained a series of video files.
Grandpa had installed a hidden, motion-activated camera inside a digital photo frame on his desk months before he died. He knew they would try something. The footage was devastating. There was Marcus sitting in Grandpa's chair while the old man was asleep in the next room. There was Henderson, the trusted lawyer, sliding blank sheets of estate stationery across the desk. "The G is too loopy, Marcus." Henderson's voice came through the speakers, clear as a bell. "Try again. We need it to look authentic for the notary." "I've been practicing for 6 hours, Bill," Marcus snapped back. "Once we get this signed and backdated, the girl is out and the foundation money is ours. Silas wants the yacht in the Med. I want the Singapore holdings." I watched my own father nod in agreement. They weren't just forging a will, they were laughing about how easy it was to rob the golden girl. I didn't go to the police yet. I waited for the first board meeting of Sterling Global. Marcus was at the head of the table, flanked by Silas and a dozen executives. They were discussing the restructuring of the company, liquidating the charitable assets to fund their personal lifestyles. I walked into the boardroom. The security guard tried to stop me, but I shoved the $50,000 they gave me into his hand. "Consider this your severance. Move." I walked straight to the projector and plugged in my laptop. "Maya, you're trespassing," Marcus sneered, rising from his seat. "Security, get her out of here." "Sit down, Marcus," I said, my voice echoing in the sudden silence. "I think the board would love to see the January 14th practice session." I hit play. The room watched in absolute horror as the video showed the 3 men huddled over the desk like common thieves. The sound of them mocking Grandpa's final days filled the room. Marcus went from red-faced with anger to ghostly white in 30 seconds. This is a deep fake," Henderson stammered, his hands shaking. "The metadata is timestamped and encrypted, Bill," I said, stepping closer, "and the forensic analysis of the paper shows it was manufactured in April, 3 months after you claimed it was signed. You're not just bad family, you're bad criminals." The doors opened and 2 detectives walked in. I had sent them the files an hour before the meeting. As they led Marcus and my father in handcuffs, Marcus looked at me, his eyes full of rage. "We're family, Maya. You're destroying us." "No," I said, holding up the brass compass. "I'm just following the map Grandpa left me." Today, the Sterling Foundation is the largest of its kind in the country. Marcus and Henderson are serving 7 to 10 years. My father is under house arrest, penniless. I didn't lose a family. I lost a group of vultures, and I gained the one thing they could never forge: the truth.